Going to crack a can, but it's the old 0.5%. Can you see that? The Cloudwater
Hmm.
Fresh. It's the in my opinion, one of the top alcohol-free IPAs on the market. I don't know if anybody else is feels strongly either way.
I don't think I've had that one before, or
I'll
I've
go.
even seen it.
Actually looks like a real beer. Oh, you
Yeah,
can't see
to
it.
me, they rarely taste like a real
Uh,
beer. It's almost like hazy hop waters, how I usually perceive them.
it's a
So
real.
These days, Serge, I think you'll find that there have been vast improvements over the past year. I've had a couple of mixed cases, one from Nirvana and the
mhm.
other
Mhm.
one from Brulo.
Mm.
They are what I might say stunning in terms of no low alcohol beers. And I think for most of them, gone are the days where you get that sort of worty taste to them. I think they benefit from being hopped with fragrant American and such hops. But some of the Helles style lagers from, say, both Brulo and Nirvana are
Mhm.
really, really very good. Worth trying. I thoroughly recommend them. Yeah.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I think basically it's one of the most difficult styles to brew, and now we are sort of 5, 10 years into the sort of trend. The good brewers that have been really, really working on the recipes are finally cracking it. People are still really keeping their cards close to their chest though, so there's no agreed upon best practice currently. If you're just interested, it's a very collaborative industry. Do you know if you were to just phone up the brewery next door to you and ask for advice on how to make a 4% cask pale ale, guaranteed to get a response out of the brewer and a recipe and everything else. But if you were to ask how they're doing their 0.5%, not a chance.
A lot comes down to the yeast. So there is a particular yeast around, and I'm not sure who does it. I can't even remember now, but it's a yeast that is used for specifically for brewing no low alcohols. But you could do it other ways. I mean, Ken will tell you he's mashed in at what is it, 80 degrees? Ken, is that how you do your low 80 degrees, which is sort of unheard of in brewing terms, but yeah, it is done, and they are very successful.
I'll doing the little chat now. I'll show you what we've released today, and we can have a quick. It's not totally relevant to home brewing, is it? Because I know it's not every home brewer is really going to be pumping out corny kegs of 0.5% IPA, but I'll have a little chat about what we're on offer for the commercial sized breweries, and yeah, exciting times really. Lots of different schools of thought and new recipes and things, and I've been telling my boss for a while, and he was a bit reluctant at the start, but I tell him this is the only sector of craft beer that's brewing, and it's the only way to get new drinkers interested in beer. So gotta, it's not just a passing trend. Gotta really make sure we're paying good attention.
Yeah, you're right, Paul. And actually, on this note, we are on the mark, so it's over to you.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Hopefully everybody's back or there or thereabouts. So just cheers to the London Amateur Brewers Lab. WHC Lab. I always get lactoacid bacillus, lactoacid bacteria in our name there when it's written in the all caps. So, firstly, thanks very much for having me in. Appreciate the invite. It's great to get involved with some amateurs as opposed to the commercial guys. You can imagine. My job is technical sales here at WHC Lab, and sometimes it's quite difficult to get brewers to listen to you, but it's quite nice to have really active, engaged listening from home brewers for sure, who tend to be way more engaged to presentations and ask fantastic questions. So thanks in advance. I'll introduce myself firstly. So I'm Paul. I'm here in South Wales, so I'm working for WHC Lab currently. I've been in beer and beverage now for coming up on a decade. Previously, my undergrad was in biomedical science, and kind of meandered, after graduated, and didn't really find this area that was capturing my attention until I moved into a small village in the mountains with a really good brew pub in the middle of the road. Banff in Canada in the Rocky Mountains. So it's Banff Ave Brew Pub. Used to frequent there a few times a week, and looking back, they didn't have the most spectacular range of beers on, but it certainly broadened my horizons in terms of beer and beverage and fermentation and flavor and everything. And I tried desperately to get a job there, and they wouldn't have it, wouldn't even let me get in and scrub the floors, unfortunately. So it wasn't until I moved again down to Australia and I found myself working at Stone and Wood. I think there was an Australian in the room with us. Was it Peter? So Peter will be familiar with Stone and Wood, who are now, a large have been absorbed by a large macro, but they were a really influential craft brewery and probably crafted the best 4.2% hazy, slightly hazy pale ale that you can imagine. It was back when Galaxy hops used to be phenomenal, and it was before anybody tasted anything like it. So this super tropical, passion fruity 4.2% pale, amazing. So really, really good brewery to be involved with. Ended up coming back to the UK during COVID, and I wanted to get properly qualified in the world of brewing and distilling. So I ended up back at Heriot-Watt. If you're not familiar with Heriot-Watt, it's the Edinburgh University. Got a ton of brewing courses on. I was lucky to go and study the MSc Brewing and Distilling Science. Give me a really, really good grounding, really good, refined that scientific background, and great gateway into the UK brewing then for me. Spent a few years on the production side of things. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but you need to know your way around the tools as well. It's tough out there. Found myself working in some slightly dubious breweries just by happen chance, and you learn a lot from you learn a lot from. We'll leave it at that. Just a few dodgy breweries, lots of experience. Saw all sorts of things, really fast learning curve. A lot of these businesses are really struggling, so there were things going on that would that even you guys, as homebrewers, would shudder at and never do. So really, really interesting stuff. And after a couple of years in production brewing in the UK, a couple of different breweries, I've found the opportunity to come and join WHC Lab, Stone and Wood. Absolutely, have a look at that at 4.2% hail. It is sold in the UK every now and then. It's honestly phenomenal. It was really, really good. It might have been macroed out of existence for the time being. So this opportunity came around to join WHC Lab. Really, really great growing company and exciting stuff. I'd brewed with a few of their yeast strains and things. It really caught my attention, and it's a good opportunity now to apply their my sort of background, my qualifications to a slightly new area. Basically, I now, as technical sales manager for UK and Ireland, I'm out and about. I'm meeting brewers all the time. I'm brewing on really, really awesome kits all around the country, involved in recipe design and technical help and support and things like that. It's a great job. I'm very lucky to be where I am. I'm absolutely loving it. So I can now probably go on to talking a little bit about WHC Lab, and to do that, I'm going to share my screen. So bear with me a sec, because I'm not a Zoom user. Cracking. I'm screen sharing. I think you can see that. Give me a thumbs up.
We're on.
Yeah, yep. Happy days. All right, great. So WHC Lab, I assume some of you guys may have heard of us already, but I will speak as if you haven't. So we are based over in Wicklow. That's the W, Wicklow, which is just south of Dublin. So that's where our main production facility is. And the lab was set up originally to service the distilling industry in Ireland with just lab testing. And it didn't take long before a local brewery, a brewery in Wicklow, asked us to propagate some yeast for them. And the rest is history, basically. So that was actually that first ever yeast strain propagated was the original Burlington Conan strain. So the true Nipa strain. That was the first request, and from there, we haven't really looked back. So there's been a ton of expansion over the last sort of 10 years. It's a relatively new company as well, by the way. That sort of started in 2016, 17, bearing in mind COVID years and everything like that. It's a really difficult time to set up a company, but we've got a really, really ambitious two founders are really, really ambitious and know how to grow a business. And so we've got a pretty steep trajectory. A lot of the smaller yeast labs that you're probably familiar with, tends to be sitting somewhere more on the craft end of the yeast manufacturing spectrum, which might be, one or two guys and maybe a few small fermented vessels and a few flasks in the shed. But we've managed to really climb the ladder of capacity and pushing boundaries of what's possible on site there and expanding and getting investment and things over the last few years. It's been some really astronomical growth, which has enabled us to bring out loads and loads of exciting brewing strains. So I'll try my best now to flick through our list of brewing yeast. There's three main areas for the business at the moment: brewing yeast, distilling yeast, and then newly added is the enzymes and processing aids. So I will get onto the brewing yeast. We'll start with our dried yeast first, which is absolutely what you guys will be familiar with. Go on to talk about linked with the challenge that we're going to run with you guys, which is great. So this is sorted by best selling. So I'm pretty sure everybody that's got been making more than a few beers in homebrew has heard of Saturated. It's our number one best selling yeast strain. Super popular, very, very versatile. Right now, you can tell by the logo and the way we talk about it, it's marketed as a NEPA strain. That's just what everybody's brewing at the moment. That's what everybody wants. But this is the London Ale 3 is called. It's actually the Boddington's yeast originally. So this yeast has been making great beer on these lands for a long, long time, and way before haze and turbidity was even considered a positive outcome of a brew. I wonder what those brewers back in Boddington's 50, 60, 70 years ago would think if you slapped down a NEPA in front of them and told them that's what you were building a business on. But great yeast strain, really, really versatile. We've got loads more going on. We cover nearly every style of brewing you can. We've got West Coast IPAs. We've got heritage German lager strains. We've got Old English traditional strains. Haze Heaven is a new popular one that's climbing the ranks of our best-selling yeast there. That's another hazy strain. Like I say, you can release 50 hazy yeast to the market, and that's what everybody wants to brew at the moment. It's very, very in vogue. Although I'll be totally honest, I think I'm getting slightly tired of all haze and juice and no bitterness. So maybe it's starting to turn back on itself. But have to remind we're right at the pointy end of drinkers, right? So it's going to take a while for it to come back. You can tell with our branding and things here, we're very flavor focused with fermentation. It's something that we tried to bring to both beer and to distilling as well. And with a lot of other yeast on the market, looks a little bit like medicine. It looks a little scientific. We're trying to be a bit fun with it and be descriptive and let people know. It's like Ron Seal paint. Yeah, it does exactly what it says on the tin. That's the goal. Anyhow, so we've got a range of about 20 dried yeast here, all sorts of different Norwegian hot fermenting, fast fermenting, clean, estery, and a few Central European styles like the Hefeweizen and everything else. New additions down the bottom. So they're right down the bottom of our yeast here, because they haven't sold a thing yet, because they literally went live this morning. These are commercial packs here. This is 500 grams of yeast, and very excited to add them to the lineup. So I think I'll show you a glimpse of what else we do, and then we'll double back to the new yeast strains. So we go to distilling yeast. I don't know, are there any enthusiastic home distillers making moonshine in the bathtub amongst you? The world.
I think we have a couple. I think I saw Rob online. Rob's distilled a couple of things. Homemade whiskey, I think.
Great stuff. The Venn diagrams definitely overlap, but I think the distillers tend to be a little crazier. That's how you can tell them apart. A bit more experimental and a bit more
Could we just go back to the new strain, the low alcohol strain? So,
yeah.
so what is that exactly? I've heard of no maltose fermenting yeasts. Is that like
Yeah, tell you what, let me whip through the
maltose negative?
distilling, the
Okay.
enzymes, and then we'll go back, right? Yeah, I want to spend a bit of time on it because there was a bit of interest.
Ah,
So
okay.
just with the just quickly down a dry distilling list here as well, right? So you have a few different characteristics that you'd be looking for with a distilling strain. Very, very yield focused. They're much harder workers. They work at much higher temperatures, and they eat way more of the sugars. That's basically it. They also initially taste terrible, so you definitely do not want to be making beer with these because it would be thin, over attenuated, and highly phenolic in flavor typically. But of course, when you're extracting alcohol, you need yield. What's really interesting is a lot of distillers are waking up to the flavor benefits of fermentation and are starting to blend and introduce beer strains back into their wash fermentations. Get really really unique spirits that way. In a when you're trying to differentiate a fairly standard whiskey recipe, you need every small margin you can. It's really really interesting stuff. It's hard to predict because it's not just the flavors produced by fermentation; it's how they behave going up the still, and then how they behave during maturation as well. So it's a really complicated area of science, and but a fair amount of guesswork in it as well. We've run a really cool study at the moment, and we'll be presenting some results in the in the World Distilled Spirits Conference, which is coming up in May in Edinburgh, and it's done in conjunction with a Japanese cooperage. So that's a Japanese barrel manufacturer, and they've done a bunch of different fermentations. We've done some accelerated aging, and then we're trying to see how fermentation and wood interplay in final spirit. So it's really really interesting, and definitely one for the spirits nerds out there. Range of enzymes and processing aids. I'm seeing these increasingly more at the homebrew scale, which I think is amazing. I think it just shows how good homebrewers are getting, basically, and how much they're looking for that fine margin that enzymes can give you. So a couple of enzymes, basically, for mashing enzymes, getting the most out of your grain, or if you've got a particularly troublesome mash tun, maybe you're using crazy amounts of adjuncts for some reason, and you're finding you're making porridge and it's getting stuck. So you can add enzymes in different ratios to sort of add to what's already there, but speed it up and make the process easier for yourself. One really, really popular enzyme at the moment is ALDC, and I'm seeing that at the homebrew level as well. I know Malt Miller package little thimblefuls of it because you need such a small dosage in 20 liters, and ALDC is a lifesaver in commercial breweries. It helps with conditioning time. What it's going to do essentially is speed up your conditioning time because you are bypassing the reaction that would produce you give you VDK issues, give you diacetyl buttery off flavors. So just that small little addition into the FE, you leave the enzyme do its work, and all of a sudden you can shave days off your conditioning time, not worried about diacetyl, particularly either end of the beer spectrum. So it's really useful in lagers and pale, thin beers because the diacetyl is very evident on such a pale background. Really good there. On the flip side, big hazy hoppy beers. I'm sure you guys have all experienced hop creep and what that can do to your beer. So if you're huge dry hop additions, that in conjunction with ALDC, amazing. If you were to imagine you're in a commercial brewery and 60% of your volume is made up of your one flagship 4% pale ale, if you're brewing that 50, 60, 70 times a year, imagine what shaving off a day or two of tank time with an additive like ALDC can do to your brewery capacity. You're talking hundreds of days of empty tanks freed up by this simple addition. It's relatively cheap per liter of beer produced. It's a really, really cool thing. useful for you guys, obviously, if you're making beer in a rush for a party on the weekend, but also if you just really want that belt and braces approach to diastill. It's great tool. So if you haven't tried it yet, maybe give it a go in your next brew. So that's basically it from us. I'd imagine you might find our custom propagation fairly interesting as well. So amongst, we'll go back to the brewing yeast and we'll talk about the long list of dried yeast we do. We've also got a really successful approach to liquid yeast manufacturing, but we can also custom propagate basically anything that your heart desires. So yeast is really interesting as an organism. It's basically open source. It's everywhere around us. It's you're not able to copyright it. So every yeast manufacturer has access to all the same banks and all the same sources of yeast that every other lab in the world has, and they can grow it up and sell it. That's why if you talk about the Chico Ale strain, every manufacturer has a version of that. It's one of the most popular strains in brewing. You run through a few of them: WLP 001, USO 5, Cali Ale, Bry 97, and then our LAX. So interesting world of yeast, particularly around the legalities of copyrighting and things. I kind of think it's similar to dogs. There's tons of different dogs out there and breeders and everything, but no one person has the copyright on Labradors. So if someone decided they really wanted to grow up some Labradors and sell them, they can do that around the world. Back to brewing yeast. We're talking just about the dried, and we will firstly talk about the Zero Hero. This has literally come out today. So is that a good size? Are you able to see the spec sheet there?
Yep, that's very clear. Nice one.
Cool. It's gone again. Sorry. Great. It won't stay on screen. I'm sorry. Brand new strain. So this is I can't even say it, the Tarulaspora delbrueckii strain. You hear people saying delbrueckii a lot. It sounds like Del Boy. It is a non-Saccharomyces strain that's been selected because it has unique fermentation properties. And I'd imagine when this was discovered and these fermentation properties were described, it would have been shelved as useless because it's attenuation. And I will see if we can get down to the technical specs here. The attenuation is missing on our website, isn't it? The attenuation is... Am I sharing screen, or is that screen?
No, you're sharing the screen. Yeah, we can see the spec sheet.
Yeah, we are. So this is the TDS, and it is missing on the website, isn't it? I'm not losing my mind. I'm looking for the attenuation range. This could easily be a typo. Like I said, this has literally gone live today. So if this is a typo, all right, let me look for one that does have a... When you're talking about, this is funny if we've just discovered, there we go. So we've gone back to saturated. I think that's my first job tomorrow morning is figure out why that yeast has been uploaded without the correct information. When you're talking about attenuation, talk about how many of the sugars can be consumed, but it's given us a range because of course yeast is alive and there's lots of factors affecting fermentation. So it's given us a range, you can use the middle of that range for any calculations, but those figures are calculated on a 66-degree mash, 100% barley. So you'll well know if you're raising that mash temperature, that attenuation is going to plummet, or if you're using tons of unfermentables in your grist as well, that's going to plummet. And the opposite is true if you're using pure sugar and a low mash temp. Going to go up. So typical brewing strain right here, saturated, 73 to 77% attenuation. That's obviously no good if you're trying to make a 0.5% or a low ABV beer. So actually, even though it doesn't say it on the website, the Zero Hero ferments anywhere between 10 and 15%. It basically does absolutely nothing. What it is going to do when it's in wort and it's able to complete its fermentation is a similar behavior to a typical brewing strain in that it's going to create some flavor. It's also going to remove some flavor. And that flavor that it's going to remove is, we touched on it earlier, it's it's the worty off flavors. One of the important flavor groups they call Strecker aldehydes. Strecker being a surname, so capitalized Strecker. He's a chemist to describe this group of aldehydes that is, you'd be very familiar with it. When you taste your first run-ins, that is the all too familiar in the world of 0.5%. It's a very common off flavor in beer, but you need yeast to remove it, and it does so by having a complete fermentation. The trouble is, if it's a normal brewing strain, it's going to have a complete fermentation. It's going to make 4% beer, but you need a small amount of successful fermentation, 10 to 15% attenuation, and to make a good beer that the yeast then is able to clean up after itself. You're able to have sufficient contact time to create some flavors and clean up any off flavors as well. So we would describe this strain as maltose and maltotriose negative. There are previously common brewing strains that are maltotriose negative. You'll be familiar with Windsor yeast. Now, that is maltotriose negative, and if you were to look at the attenuation figures quoted for Windsor, you'd hit 60-ish% on a 66-degree mash, all barley. Really good for a mid-strength beer, a mild, say, something targeting 2.5, 3.5%. Really, really good because it leaves behind those slightly more complex sugars, which add body and mouthfeel to the beer. But nobody's drinking 3.5% beers at the moment, and they want 0.5. So how do we do that when we need a yeast that is unable to consume both maltotriose and the even simpler sugar maltose, which makes up a big chunk of any malt-based fermentation there.
Paul, can I just ask a question about that one?
Please.
So does that mean when you're doing a low alcohol, you don't need to add like maltodextrin to give it body? Because it's maltose negative, it will leave body in the beer, or how does that work?
Yeah, great question. This is like a huge area of concern and attention for commercial breweries at the moment. So yes, it's going to leave behind maltotriose and maltose. However, you'd have only brewed your wort to a starting gravity of approximately 10-20 and fermented down to 10-16, 10-15-ish, depending. Sometimes you overshoot that and you have to add a bit of deaerated liquor, so you're making it thinner, more watery as well. So these grists and these beers, despite it not fermenting the maltose and the maltotriose, it is leaving behind body by doing that. They're still very, very thin. Perceptibly so, problematic, definitely. So as well as hitting your target gravities and you're having a complete fermentation, allowing it to clean up whilst also not producing too much alcohol to make you out of spec and illegal, you have to somehow then reverse engineer body. Now, people are getting really creative with how they're doing that. It's definitely not like any other category of beer or any other style. Some of the grist I see that, in recipes out and about blow my mind. People brewing with like 95% Cara pills, which is just unheard of. So obscene amounts of adjunct hop and expensive grist, and then also maltodextrin, tons and tons of maltodextrin. It's really, really difficult to get that full body and mouthfeel. I was actually thinking that this Cloudwater Fresh IPA that I have here, 0.5%, does have a roundness to it. I think Serge mentioned earlier that it's some of the ones he's had have been like essentially hop water with a tiny bit of color to it, and definitely try that if you get a chance, Serge, and let me know what you think. But people, they're getting good, and that's the good thing about it. We've got another interesting product. I'll just pull up another one of our processing aids here, because every ingredient supplier is desperate to solve this problem for brewers, because if you do solve it, you're gonna sell loads. Zero Hero, okay. Problems with non-alc beer, yeah, absolutely. Stability. If you've got a yeast that has only fermented 10 to 15% of the fermentable sugars, you've got loads there. It's like a ticking time bomb. We say pasteurization is 100% required. There's no room, there's no wiggle room there. This is about commercial breweries. A pasteurizer is not necessarily a piece of kit that every commercial brewery has. In fact, it's rare that a commercial brewery has. It's certainly on the craft end of the spectrum. It's rare that there's any capabilities to pasteurize. There are people, of course, but this is craft. We love craft, and there's a reason that we all do it. There are people that reverse engineer a pasteurization machine, and they will use their mash tun, and they will soak package cans of beer or kegs of beer and soak them in their mash tun or boil them in their kettle in an attempt to achieve pasteurization. That's risky because it's almost impossible to calculate they're called PUs, pasteurization units. It's almost impossible to calculate what that can in the middle of that mash tun is getting, and so you'll be stewing some of them, and you won't be cooking enough of them on the edge.
Yeah. But Paul, something to mention on this. I very successfully pasteurized quite a few mixed fermentation beers. So cool, when I don't want them to get any more sour, I literally actually use a big pot akin to a mash tun, and sort of, I don't remember the exact schedule, but usually I keep the lot for half an hour at 73C, and over time I've had literally zero fermentation in those bottles. They've been completely stable for a couple of years now.
Yeah, amazing. It's not it's not new technologies. It's Louis Pasteur, and he sort of had that initial idea. You've done a good job there of basically nuking everything in your mixed firm there for sure to stop any. But there are heat resistant Bretts and things as well out there that could in theory have survived that. So it's really complicated. It's also really scary if you've made a batch of beer and you've sent it across the country and all of a sudden they pop in and you're having to do product recalls and things. It can quite honestly end your brewery's existence on a commercial scale because of the cost of recall and the insurance and the supplier reputation and everything. And if you've got kegs blow in and you lose a contract and things like that, it's horrible. We don't want anything to do with this. That's why we're definitely drawing a line under pasteurization is 100% key. There's breweries are investing now in tunnel pasteurizers to get this done properly, and then they can offer contract pasteurization to other breweries nearby and things. I saw somebody on a forum the other day thinking about getting a tunnel pasteurizer on the back of a truck and doing mobile tunnel pasteurization. So everybody's thinking about this sector. Previously, beer, humans wouldn't exist if beer wasn't 100% safe because we'd have killed ourselves a long time ago. But now all of a sudden you
can go salmonella really low on a low alcohol as well, right?
Exactly. No, a limited hop content, pH issues, and no alcohol means that all of a sudden now some nasties can grow. So
you've got to pasteurize it somehow.
Got to pasteurize it, yeah, and then also got to make sure that you're very, really careful with your measurements and you haven't put something that's 2% in a bottle either, because that's equally dangerous if somebody's pregnant or driving or anything else. So really, really complex, but I've spent a fair amount of time on this tonight, even though it's maybe less relevant to you guys, but it's a really interesting area. And like I said, no agreed upon best practice for getting there at the moment. I'm quite close to Wiper and True in Bristol, and if you go to their tap room, they'll have 5 taps that will be alcohol free on at the moment. Awesome brewery. They are convinced that de-alcoholization is the way to go. So what you do there is you brew a normal beer. I shouldn't say normal. Brew an alcoholic beer. You pass it one way and you pass water the other way and across a membrane filtration system, and you take alcohol out into the water stream, and you keep the non-alcoholic beer on one side. They spend a lot of money on that, and they're convinced that that's the best that's the best way to do it. I've had some great beers from them, but maybe they're convinced that it's the best way because they spent all that money. Who knows? I've had some great beers made in other ways then, and you can make non-alcoholic beer with a regular brewing strain if you're very careful with your fermentation. You stop it early and you don't give it too much sugar to work with. So there's loads and loads of different ways to do it, but we're just happy now to have all of the options. We've got a 0% strain here, Zero Hero. We've got Malta Trios negative strain, which is similar to the Windsor regular brewing strain. So, and then the enzymes and processing aids to back it up as well. So
thanks.
I will skip over now onto Fountain Bridge. We've got loads going on this year. There's probably going to be 6 or 7 new strains come to market from us this year. Fountain Bridge and Zero Hero, the first 2 chosen, but I think we've got at least another 4 that I can think of, and a few more with question marks on them as well. So Fountain Bridge. Does anybody recognize the name? Fountain Bridge is a district in Edinburgh. I was just chatting, as it happens today, with Barney, who is Barney. So Andrew Barnett, who is Barney of Barney's Beers in Edinburgh. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the brewery. They run a great festival up there called Gravity Beer Fest. Smallish brewery, 10 or so hectoliters, but he's a very creative brewer. And just chatting with him because I thought he might be interested. And he told me that he actually worked as a younger brewer on the original Fountain Bridge site, which is the Caledonian brewery, which unfortunately closed down now, a historic old site of brewing in Edinburgh. And he said he was at one point he was in charge of propagating this strain up. So that was a happy accident. I was just emailing him because he was Scottish. I didn't realize that he would have been so involved in the Fountain Bridge history himself. But anyway, this strain has been on our radar for a while. One of the things that we do when we assess the viability of a yeast strain, and we put it through some trials, essentially, like we jokingly refer to as like the Yeast Olympics, and you can assess all sorts of qualities and how it grows in different types of media, what it's fermenting like at different temperatures, speed, everything. So every now and then you get like a real champion. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best strain for brewing. In fact, a lot of those strains that are really, really good at distilling are terrible for beer, right? So it's not all about strength and vigor and everything else. But every now and then there's yeast strains that sort of like catch your eye because they are outperforming the standard brewing strains, and this is one of them. So it became very evident early on that this is a fast fermenting and hardy yeast strain, high ABV tolerance. So bit of a workhorse already, sort of aware of. What's particularly interesting then is how clean the fermentations were. So we talked briefly about the Chico ale strains earlier and their popularity and their versatility because they're so clean. This matches them in terms of ester production. So it's fast and versatile because you can do anything with it. And it's super, super... It's high ABV tolerance, is very, very versatile. And it's very... what's the word I'm looking for? Adept, different beer styles, different... So if you were to be looking for a yeast strain that you could... pick one for the rest of your life. It might be something like this. You wouldn't want to pigeonhole yourself with something like a hef strain, and then all of a sudden, all you can brew in your brewery is beers with the POF positive and phenolic and banana-y hefs, and you can't be making lagers with that, and you can't be making IPAs there. So you'd be picking something that does a broad spectrum of beers here. Furthermore, the temperature range in which it's able to act and be happy and ferment fine is pretty wide. And then, interestingly, up at the top end of its fermentation temperatures, gets a bit fruity and gets a little bit estery. So actually, we started thinking now that you could really manipulate this strain into basically any style. If you were looking at the Chico ale strains and trying to ferment a bit hot and a bit fast, there's a tiny bit of like almost citrus ester produced from those, but actually they get a bit stressed out and they get a bit sulfury and they don't like it. So no, they're not that versatile. But then this strain's come around and it's ticked loads and loads of boxes. We've got a couple of beers being brewed with it already. All the Scottish guys have hopped on board because of the Fountain Bridge link, and they've been brewing wee heavies. They've been brewing 6% Scottish export strength IPAs and things like that. Really, really cool stuff. So I think, given that this strain is literally about to arrive in 11 grams, and given that you guys are in a position to make some really creative beers, I think would like to see the limits pushed as far as they possibly can with this yeast strain. if you were to turn around and say, I want to brew a 12% imperial stout, great. Yeah, it says 18 to 22 on the pack. Yeah, so that temperature range is a range for optimum fermentation, and that's been chosen as the optimum range for typical brewery productions. Clean. So that's you get no ester formation at that temperature, but you can push that higher. You can turn that dial up 23, 24, no trouble at all. And just really get those extra esters, push the limits of what's possible, basically.
Paul, on that one, what I was thinking, and I'm very keen to hear the thoughts from the rest of the group. But what I was thinking initially is, we obviously, this is the strain that we need to push into as many styles as possible, and just really try to find the limit, if one exists, of where it excels, where it doesn't. So I was thinking is each brewer would effectively pick as a specific style, and every single brewer would brew a different style, so that if we are like, to imagine the meeting when you come to sample our results, we would have, I don't know, 10, 12, depending on how many people have signing up, completely different styles brewed with the same yeast. And I think a whole bunch of us would have a preferred style to brew, and see if what we can make of it. What do you guys all think on the format?
That sounds awesome. I saw someone just say Kolsch ? Definitely. I'd expand the definition of Kolsch to be a lager-like beer brewed at ale temperatures, and yeah, absolutely, this yeast could do that. You'd be surprised out there in the world of lager production how many lagers on the market aren't actually brewed with lager yeast. And if you were to look at the time in tank spent by a traditional German Pastoriana strain, and how much it might cost for you to keep all those liters of beer. Yeah, steam beer is another one as well. Yeah, all those liters of beer cold for all that time. It doesn't fit the world of modern commercial breweries a lot of the time. So in fact, a lot of brewers out there are seeking shortcuts to the same end goal. Sounds like why yeast Scottish makes you good. This isn't a strain that's unique or newly discovered or anything by us. It's depending on which yeast manufacturer has obtained it from which yeast bank, or whether I think there's many iterations of the Caledonian Edinburgh Ale Foundry Bridge strain out there. Scotch Newcastle, yes, because that was when Vaux bought Caledonian. Was it? Am I right in thinking that? Yes, almost certainly, and I think at that moment in time as well, there was lots of sharing between breweries that were neighbours as well. If their yeast was struggling, dying one day, that you could nip down the road. Another interesting angle on this yeast strain for us is distilling, the world of distilling. So I mentioned earlier, distilling strains currently, what distillers are looking for a lot of the time now is yield. But actually, back during the inception of the Scottish whiskey industry, distillers were just getting spent yeast from breweries, and so it wasn't necessarily super efficient distilling strains. They were literally just going next door, getting spent yeast. It was free, it was readily available, and pushing the limits of that. So actually, early whiskey might have been getting a lot more flavor from their fermentation than maybe some of these modern strains that we're offering. And we'll be running this project in conjunction with a lot of Scottish distilleries there as well. And there's something called half. If any Scots in the room, I'm going to butcher this now. There's something called half and half, which is spelled HAUF, which is like a custom of getting like a half pint of ale and a whiskey to match. And we've got a very passionate Scottish distiller named Vicky on our team, and she is going to be running fermentation projects now across different breweries and distillery locations to sort of show what's possible with this strain across the two, blending the two, and hopefully ending up with some products that you can sample side by side in both spirits and beers. So yeah, again, versatility beyond beer there as well, which is pretty cool.
Paul, obviously we've spoken about the temperature range of the yeast, and you said you can push it to 23, 24 and get just a bit more ester formation. Two questions on this. Does it become phenolic if you push it too high? And then also, how low can you go?
How low can you go? It's POF negative, so
yeah,
we're not worried about that. The most likely problems that you encounter, I guess, are like super voracious, spending too much time reproducing, using all the nutrient, and then a slightly problematic fermentation. But like I said, with this strain, it's super sturdy. It seems very, very sturdy. So one you can rely on. When treating stuck fermentations in the world of commercial brewing, quite frequently, and it's not the most complicated thing in the world, quite frequently something that can help is dumping in a brick of yeast, right? That's not, it's pretty common sense, there's 2 or 3 strains that you can really rely on. Yeah, almost any strain. If in an emergency you could do 500-gram brick in the top, and it would be any strain will do. But there's a few strains on the market that are just notorious. They're just great to work with. You can really depend on them. Our Old English, which is like the Nottingham Ale strain, is one of them. LAX is another one. It's a really hard worker, and this is off the charts as well on lots of that. So yeah, don't be afraid of stressing this one out. It should be really good.
Awesome, thank you.
Do you want me to go on now to what we discussed might make a good McEwan's Yeast 121 72 ale suggests 30. Yeah, see they've quoted a really wide temperature range there. So
there's no attenuation on this one either. There's no attenuation mentioned.
Yeah, that's the 2 strains that have gone up today have been uploaded incorrectly. So I've made a note. That's going to be my job in the morning. Not my job to tell somebody that it's that it's a mistake. I'm not allowed to touch the website.
Sorry, can I say I was really interested to hear you talk about the distillers using brewery yeasts. One of our alumni called Rich Lott. I guess he still is a fabulous home brewer, but he went off to Somerset to set up his own company called the Retribution Distilling Company.
I know,
yes.
Rich, yeah.
Yes, and I've just recently had one of his whiskies, and it's fabulous. But he's working with 4 English breweries, 2 of which are Harveys and Fullers, plus 2 more to do exactly what you're talking about. So they're making 4 different batches with 4 different brewery yeasts, where the only difference between the batches is the yeast, just to see what difference it makes. So I'm looking forward to, I guess, about 3 years' time to when that comes to fruition.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's a slightly old school kind of corporate mindset in distilling, which is very much yield efficiency, alcohol production, and it does not allow for any room for fermentation to be doing anything other than just making alcohol, right? That's it. But as we know, brewers doing fermentation, there's tons of other things that get thrown off, some good, some bad. You smell enough of your fermenting vessels to know that there's loads more going on there, and some of that does make it up the still. Like, it just does. You have difference. You can tell as soon as the new make is produced, you can tell that they've got different conjures, different flavor molecules, and transformative molecules as well. Rich is doing.
Isn't it really dependent on the shape and size of your spirit still? So like in Glenmorangie, you got these really high stills, and I don't think any esters get through there. But if you go to, say, Macallan, these really thick, short, and a very low slanted spirit still, you might get a lot of esters getting in there. So it really depends on the distillery. It's not just does it work or not.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, if you were doing 3 stripping runs and your goal was to make a completely clear grain, grain-based alcohol, then you can do that. So there's loads of variables, and people have been playing with still size more than they've been playing with fermentation, yeast, and parameters for the last few years, which I think is crazy because obviously the most accessible thing to change is your fermentation. There's English whiskies on the up. Rich is part of that at Retribution, and it's really, really cool to see what's coming through. We've got a Kvike-derived strain in our lineup called Mango Madness. I don't know if anyone's used it. It's been selected from one of these Norwegian Kvike blends because of its crazy performance. It's super fast fermenter, high ABV tolerance, similar to this strain actually, but it's got unbelievable amount of overripe mango aromas. Now that has captured the attention of a lot of rum producers, and actually Mango Madness is making a lot of rum around the world at the moment. Just again showing what's possible to unlock with your fermentation. It's not just a tool to produce the ABV. It's this thing. Just the issue is because of the extra distillation and then maturation phases, it's very hard to predict what those flavor molecules might end up being and how they might end up displaying themselves, I guess, in final product, which is 5 years down the line. Which is something that we're attempting to do with this study with the forced aging program and the wood from the Japanese cooperage. We'll see what those results show. Obviously, that's underway at the moment. I was going to move on next, Serge, to thiol theory, just to have a quick chat about thiols and IPAs. Does that interest everybody? How are we doing for time? Are we all right?
We've got time, but this meeting sometimes lasts until 11 p.m. So we have time as long as you have time.
Sound. We'll go. Because this is another thing that we've got. Is my screen still on, by the way? Yeah, thiol theory on the screen here.
Yeah.
So the thiols and IPAs is something that's been popping up a lot lately. It seemed like it might have peaked a year or two ago. It had a moment in the States. Is it a passing trend? Who knows? Anyway, we're back now with a yeast that is designed to release thiols. So quick definition of thiols are they're flavor molecules that are present in ingredients and in beer. A lot of the time, unfortunately, the good thing about thiols, some of them have really amazing flavor descriptors that you definitely want to have in your final beverage. Passion fruit, pineapple, mango, tropical. Awesome. Really, really want that. The bad thing is, in their typical state, they are bound to like a sulfur complex, and it means that we are unable to perceive them in their final flavor form. So they're there and they're getting pulled down the drain, or they're getting drunk without being tasted, which is an absolute waste because they have really, really small flavor thresholds, which means you only need a very, very tiny amount of them to taste a lot of what they're there, except when they're in this bound state, they're completely useless. So once that became common knowledge, obviously the next step for brewers was to see how you could free these thiols from their bound state, get them into your final product and release flavor that was kind of always there but never really being able to be tasted. So a lot of clever people, a lot of PhD students, a lot of this done in by like Thomas Shellhammer. You probably recognize that name. People in Berkeley University and stuff. And they are isolated a particular enzyme, a particular protein that some yeast have and express in varying amounts. IRC7 protein, the enzyme is a beta lysase enzyme. What that enzyme does, importantly, it takes the thiol, the bound thiol, and it's the sulfur complex that it's bound to. It breaks that bond, and you have then a free thiol, and that thiol tastes amazing. We hope, right? That's the passion fruit that you want to get into your final drink. So the race has been on to find a yeast that can thiolize, is a term out there, but can free these thiols, can thiolize the beer. So first of all, we were looking for yeast that was displaying high enzymatic activity of that beta lysase enzyme, and there's a few out there. We had a previous yeast strain on the market called Hop and Lock, and it did a pretty good job. It had high enzymatic activity, and in some situations, it was really, really making great aromatic beer. Now, it wasn't, unfortunately. You compromise sometimes in this life study, and it just, despite having high enzymatic activity that beat the lysis activity, it was just bad in many other brewing characteristics. Couple of problem fermentations, bit unreliable, just non-standard brewing yeast. So it was out and about, and it made a few good beers, but also left a few people slightly less than satisfied with its overall brewing performance. Nobody was going to adopt that strain as their house strain, and one they could rely on, and one that they could be using week to week. It was good for specials, but that's about it. So behind the scenes, we set about on a mission to take the best of that yeast strain and combine it with a good, well-respected, reliable brewing strain. So thiol theory is the result of that breeding program. Now, it can be defined as a non-GMO hybridized thiolizing yeast strain. It's a bit of a mouthful, right? So we'll go through that. So it came as a result of a breeding program. So you take characteristics of yeast cells, smash them together, and look for the offspring of those yeast and see if there's one that's ticking the boxes for you. Now, there are faster ways to do that, and they have begun to do that in North America. We are not allowed to do that in Europe and the UK or anywhere else in the world, really. So that would be genetically modified yeast, GM yeast. It's got a stigma. And it's not something that we can touch there, but they're doing CRISPR technology in the States and all sorts of really clever things to take pieces of genome that they want or ones that they don't want, remove and add and remove to brewing cells. We're not able to do that, so we have to go the old-fashioned way. So you force these yeast cells to breed together, and you analyze the offspring for the qualities that you want. And hopefully, after enough repetition, you find one that does both, and that's what we've got here. So this is thiol theory. It's literally brand new. It's the first hybrid yeast strain that we've brought to market. So it's pretty exciting. It's the first non-GMO hybrid thiol strain on the market. It's going to be coming out in dried at some point this year. We've actually had a tiny delay during the drying process with it. It should have been out already, but it's been pushed back a couple of months. But it's really, really cutting edge stuff. Really exciting. I've started getting a few samples out to commercial breweries and things. It's available in liquid at the moment. The world of thiol IPA. So I guess what are you trying to do when you're trying to release these thiols? You're trying to boost flavor in your final product. You're also trying to use your ingredients better. There's a lot of hops that have high thiol content, so they've got high bound flavor molecules, which are useless. You don't taste them. Actually, it's quite unusual. A lot of these hop varieties, they're not the ones you'd expect. If you're making an NZ IPA and you're looking at the most expensive new hop variety you can find from the New World to get these tropical flavors into your beer. But actually, quite a lot of the older, cheaper varieties have been shown to be really high in thiols. You just need to find a way to release them. So that's what you're doing. That's the goal. Using ingredients in new ways, a bit more efficient. Maybe you're able to save a bit of money on your pale ale recipe. Maybe your SARS, yeah, exactly. SARS is one of them. SARS, Columbus, Cascade, things like that. Some of the noble hops. So just getting brewers to look at their recipes and look at the end goals. Look what they really, what are they trying to do, and see if you can get there in a new and novel way, because it's all about fine margins, right? So it's forcing people to mix up their brewing process as well. I'll try and run through a few of these things, because this is something that you'll definitely be able to experiment with on your scale. The first in the process that you can introduce thiols. Well, actually, malt. There are thiols in New shops. Sorry, I'm not. Where do I click on to get the chat? I only get like the first line of the.
So it should be part of your main window of Zoom.
Got it. Yeah. Oh, sorry if I've missed any. Yeah.
Yeah, and also for context, Ken, do you want to tell Paul about Croydon Fusion? We all know what it is, but Paul doesn't.
Croydon Fusion. It was that was my homegrown blend of Early Bird and Cascade. That's now sadly all gone. Yeah,
and it may have had
it may have had
content. We'll never know.
Who can know?
Let's say that it did. Let's say that it was. It's lost to the. That's good. That's good. Yeah. Okay. So how do we get thiols into our beer? So we need to get it into our wort for the yeast act on, right? We need these bound thiols. We need to get them into solution, and we need to get the yeast act on them. They're in almost every ingredient in brewing has thiol. So firstly, there's quite a high thiol content in some malt, so which is interesting, and you'll start seeing over the next few years, I suspect, some malt manufacturers publishing thiol content data as part of what they're as a sales technique for their malt. Basically, they degrade with high heat, so you are looking at the palest pale malts are going to be the highest, have the highest free bound thiol content. Something like Munton's extra super duper pale ale, I forget the name of it, but it's, they've got a new version now which is claiming to be the lowest EBC malt on the market, with really, really gentle kilning process. That's going to be absolutely where to start for your thiol IPA recipe. A big dose of that. So first step, brewing, you got your mash tun. Handily, you have these bound thiols. To get them into solution, you need high temperatures, and handily your mash temperature is a high temperature, hovering somewhere in the mid 60s. Now that's also handy because that's below the alpha acid isomerization temperature, so you can chuck some hops in to your mash tun. It gets them hot, but it doesn't get them too hot, and you can introduce flavor to your beer as early as the mashing in stage from hops, right? So you got mash hopping going on. It doesn't introduce bitterness because you're not isomerizing anything, or at least there's a tiny, tiny imperceptible amount of bitterness added. It makes the brew day smell amazing from the very beginning. So it's worth doing, even if it's just for making your garage smell nice. And yeah, you can use some of these cheaper, more accessible varieties that you previously might have overlooked, or they might have been just for bittering or something. And you can you can experiment with some of those things, some of those half packs I'm sure you've got laying around at the back of the fridge, and see if they're able to add something that you maybe didn't expect from that hop variety. Next way through the brew process, you're transferring wort from your mash tun into your kettle. 25% IBUs as if it's added for 60 minutes. I don't think it would add. Is that meant to be a percentage?
I heard that from Scott Janish, who spoke about thiols quite a bit, and he said when you mash hop, you get about 25% of the IBUs
of the hop or of the recipe.
Yeah,
interesting. Listen, this is such pointy end brewing stuff now that like the research hasn't caught up with what brewers are doing at all.
Right.
So expect this to change. Thomas Shellhammer is absolutely Scott Janish, sorry, is he's at the forefront of stuff himself. But even when you read in his blog posts and things on it, like he'll be drawing conclusions, and this is not a slightly, he's drawing conclusions from like sample size of 5. Do you know what I mean? Because it's literally the most pointy end of IPA production at the moment. I would imagine back at Harriet Watt and everywhere else, there's people that are midway through their PhDs on this topic now, because there's some really, really useful outcomes to this, and you'd be unlocking previously wasted flavor from previously wasted or overlooked cheaper ingredients. So there's like a lot of commercial interest in making your recipe cheaper and different from those others around you as well. Yeah, so super cool. It's going to need a lot of tinkering with, for sure, these recipes. So yeah, mash hopping, wax them in there, see if you can get some thiols into solution. Next step, transfer your wort over. Dip hopping. So dip hopping is transferring the first bit of wort to your fermenting vessel hot, so bypassing your heat exchanger and making a stew in the base, in the cone of your fermented vessel, which is just a hot hop tea. So at this point, you could introduce more of the same, or a different hop, or a different blend of hops into this hop tea, and then you leave that for 30-60 minutes to stew. before transferring over the rest of your wort and down, obviously bringing the temperature down to pitch your yeast. Whirlpool additions as well. That's another time where you can drop the temperature in your whirlpool and have another potential to introduce thiols from your hop build there. So that's when you're down to yeast pitch and temperature. Any old yeast would make beer in that, but only a yeast which has high enzymatic activity with the required enzyme, the beta lysis enzyme, is gonna free up those thiol molecules, because at the moment they're in solution, but they can't be tasted. So you need to get a yeast like thiol theory in and see what it can do. Now,
Paul, when you were saying, can I just clear something up? That is thiols just for hop flavor. You said that there's thiols in malt as well. Does the yeast bring out the malt flavors, or is thiols just kind of a hop enhancer?
Good question. Those thiols are flavor molecules that have, let's say there's 20 commonly known thiols. They have flavor descriptors such as pineapple, passion fruit, tropical. Those are the ones that you want. Those molecules are present in both malt and hops. So even though you can't taste them, doesn't mean they're not there. So you can introduce tropical flavored thiols from barley. Yes, which is crazy to think about, right?
But what I mean is that it's not, thiols don't enhance the malt flavor. It's about the fruit flavors that we associate with those hops.
Yeah, maybe we incorrectly associate them with hops, though, right? Like it's so there's I can't remember the full name of it, but I think it's 3-MMA is the passion fruit thiol, and that is the reason. And this is because of New Zealand terroir. That is the reason that New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc tastes like passion fruit. So there's no hops anywhere near New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, but that thiol is present on, apparently it's in really high concentration on the grape skins down there because of the terroir in New Zealand. So there's no hops anywhere near that, but that all passion fruit, but the passion fruit aromas that come in actually from that little molecule in the grape skin.
Got you.
So same molecule is
molecule that gets
and same molecule is
yeast.
Exactly, and that same molecule is in the barley,
grapes, or from malt, or from hops.
You've also got people, we can make this even more complicated. You've also got people adding New Zealand grape skins to their brewing process, and with the aim of releasing that passion fruit thiol.
Got it.
So things are going to get really weird before they make any sense, I think, in the world of thiol IPAs, because it might turn out that beetroot is super rich in a particular thiol, right, that you want, and all of a sudden we all have red pints in our hand because we really wanted to get that, that'd be fun. Actually, that would be quite a good one. And it would be even better if it was a nice cheap ingredient as well that we could grow locally. That would be fantastic.
Thanks.
So mash hopping, dip hopping, whirlpool. You're into the fermented vessel. You've got now a yeast that's going to work on those bound molecules. It's going to break that bond. What's interesting, that it's a sulfur compound that they are bonded to, and when you get a chance to experiment with this yeast strain or another thiolizing yeast strain, they stink during early stage fermentation. They are really, really sulfurous because that is them getting to work. And they, luckily we're able to evolve the sulfur from solution and have it bubble out and fart up the room that we're in. But it's a good sign early in fermentation. And I've had a few. It's really, really scary, I think, to some brewers because they experimenting, and if you've made 30 hectoliters of an experimental IPA and you come in the next morning and the room is stinking, straight on the phone to me, and you're like, "What's going on here?" Because how am I possibly going to sell this? But it's a good sign, and it is unique and new flavor molecules that were previously untastable and now present in that beer. So it's a good sign once that's calmed down and conditioned out, for sure. I think Fermentis have just launched a new lager strain which is meant to be have high thiolizing power as well, and lager fermentations can be quite sulfurous anyway. And I've heard stories that it's super sulfurous during early stage fermentation, but it's good science, right? It's the reaction that you want to be happening is happening. Yeah, co-pitching, 100%. So I guess because this is a hybrid, right? We're getting the thiolizing action of the original thiol strain that we had in combination. We actually hybridized it with like a saturated, like the Bonneton's Dunhill 3 that you're familiar with it. So it has really, really good brewing credentials, even if you were to ignore thiols as a concept and just use this yeast like any other NEPA IPA yeast. It's got really, really good brewing credentials. It's great, but it's got that enzyme. Furthermore, you can co-pitch then. So you depending on how creative you want to get, you could see if you could. Maybe not every recipe needs full-on thiol force, so you could split the 50-50 and see if you could tone it down slightly. The possibilities are endless. We just, I think this is fine to say. Yeah, we just made a beer with Wiper and True, one of their flagship IPAs there, and they co-pitched thiol theory with their house ale strain because they wanted exactly that. They wanted some thiol power, but they wanted to retain some Wiper and True character. So trying to get best of both. Definitely not an exact science when you get into blending and mixing and that. So it's a little bit of suck it and see. It's pretty much on that. It's pretty much it on this strain. It's going to be our flagship IPA strain of the year, and it's going to catch the attention of like the most creative brewers out there for sure. I think if you guys have fun with the special extravaganza, yeah, but that's coming up, isn't it? Oh, it might be. I've got one in the cupboard. I looked at it earlier. I let's hope there's still some in the fridge, or if there's a keg flying around, we can taste some for sure. End of this month, that is, or is the end of next month? I can't remember.
That's 28th of February, so that's Saturday, effectively in 2 weeks. A whole bunch of us are going from Lab. I think at the last count is about 10 judges from Lab going to the UK Nationals. So if you're there, it would be great to cross paths for sure.
Yeah, that's the next time I see you. Then is there, and Rob for them. I think James Stiff and Rob for the Malt Miller are going down as well. So should be should be good. It was good fun last year. I was on the wild and sour section.
Yeah, that's usually my favorite flight.
It was crazy. I came with like a completely new microbiome. I was a different person. It's been stripped. That's basically it, guys. I'm sorry I didn't really put together a presentation, so sorry for a slightly meandering talk. But hopefully at least there was a couple of tidbits of interesting information, and hopefully Fountain Bridge trying to be as creative as possible with Fountain Bridge sounds like a good challenge. And then also, if that goes well, we can back it up when thiol theory comes out and dried with the most creative way to introduce thiols to your beer.
That all sounds good, Paul. Have you had any thoughts about how can we be useful to you guys? Because one thing is us pushing, but in terms of things you're looking for. To hear from us, is it like the detailed recipes, fermentation schedules? How far into detail do we need to go for you guys to be like, okay, this guy's actually helped us discover something about our yeast which we possibly didn't know? Obviously, maybe not a question for right now, but just something I'd like to think about, because I think there are a lot of people here who would love to get into the details of these things.
Yeah, great. So I think just off the top of my head, and maybe I'll come back to you with some more detailed requests. But off the top of my head, for Fountain Bridge in particular, it would be like testing the hypothesis, our hypothesis that this is the strain to choose for if you were to choose one strain to run a brewery. So test that hypothesis out and be like, actually, it didn't do a good job making this strain, this type of beer, or whatever. See how far you can push that yeast and what its limits are. That would be really good. And then the thiol theory is just everything about that style of beer and that yeast strain at the moment is screams like innovation basically. So like, please, if you are on a random blog post and there's some US brewer talking about a crazy way to introduce thiols to a beer in something that I haven't heard of. Like, please give it a go and educate me, because I'm obviously not keeping up with the pointy end stuff either. American Pale, the one gold I've used lax, yeah, love it. This is the thing, isn't it? Like, do you know three strains make up like 80% of our yeast volume, and I suspect that's true of like global brewing. So as much as like we are really focused on new strains and innovation and seeing what's possible, like there's three that you can literally take over the world with just three. It saturated LAX and Einstein, the Weinsteffen lager, which probably by volume makes the most. The Weinsteffen lager strain probably makes the most beer in the world, I'd imagine. You know,
it's the 3470 classic.
Everyone's popular.
Paul, I was going to ask you, WHC have done a thiolized session yeast. It's sweet release. Is thiol theory different to that?
It is different. Okay, I'll full disclosure on sweet release. It was one of our, when we were looking for yeast strains that had high beta lysis enzyme activity, it flagged as really high. So yeah, tick box. That's there. That was out in conjunction with Hop and Lock. So they were both ticked as high beta lysis enzyme active yeast. Now, because of the pool of yeast that we were searching to find the high enzymatic activity, they weren't necessarily great brewing yeast. Didn't have all of the credentials that we would typically require for brewing strains. Like I said, Hop and Lock, it was there or thereabouts, but it just wasn't, it wasn't perfect. And sweet release, I think it had a dormant POF gene. So you get yeast that are POF positive, you get yeast that are POF negative, but you get some that are dormant. And that means that they are normally POF negative, but every now and then, under certain conditions, they decide to make phenolic off flavors. And that became more evident after release, and we decided that it wasn't quite good enough to keep it on the market. That being said, made some amazing beers with that strain. It was fruity and juicy, and it felt like it was making the good aromatics that you'd expect from a thiol strain. It's just that you can't have you can't have a yeast that may or may not make something phenolic, basically.
Yeah. So is thiol theory the same but without POF?
Thiol theory is a top quality NEPA strain which is saturated with with the beta lysis enzyme activity turned up to 10. So previously it was enzymatic activity. Can it ferment? Yeah, just about. Check it out. Now a bit more thought and effort has gone into it, and if in doubt, check it out. That's not our typical R&D process. Don't tell my boss I said that.
That's fine. No, I've got a sweet release. I'm just wondering whether to hang on for thiol theory.
Hang on to sweet release. What's the BB date on that?
Good point. July 27.
Yeah, you got time. Yeah, like I said, it's a good strain. Now I enjoyed some of the beers. It's just a shame that our attention went elsewhere, basically. But this was the end goal. Thiol theory was always the end goal. It was to find something that was a great brewing strain and also capable of this. And this is what they took the shortcut to in the States, right? This is this is what when you're able to use CRISPR technology and take the bit of the genome that you want and splice it into a yeast that you already like. This is what they took the shortcut to, but this is where we've come the long way around with the breeding program and got there. The world of GMO yeast is unbelievable. We work quite closely with Berkeley Labs over there, and they've got a big range of diacetyl knockout yeast. So they I was saying earlier how ALDC can be so handy to stop those VDK off flavors and remove speed up your brewing process by removing the need to condition and diacetyl rest and things. And they've just gone right to the beginning and snipped the bit of gene out of the yeast cell. So now it's diacetyl knockout. So it's just a shame that our attitude to GM product is it's going to take a long time to come around, basically, I think.
But there's a bit of a story. I think I discovered thiol yeast about a bit over a year now. There's a guy called Lawrence in our club. I don't think he's here tonight. So he travels to the US quite a bit, and he brought back some thiolized GM yeast. He handed it to a few of us, and I used it immediately. It definitely pushed out sulfur, like you said.
Yeah.
It was so fruity. I would almost say it was plastic. It smelled of plastic. And I think this is maybe just me, like a threshold. Like sometimes when fruitiness is too much, it starts smelling like plastic. And I actually threw it out because of that. But they do say thiolized yeasts it's a sort of a degree. It's not like it's on or off, it's a degree. And I think this one was too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've heard the same, and it's not as if these strains have been invented in the States and every single person is addicted to using them and they're in every drink either. So this comes back to the research and the fact that we are right at the end of IPA brewing, basically, by beginning to tinker with these strains. And it's touched upon co-pitching. So like perhaps, if you were running that batch 10, 15, 20 times, you would try to introduce another yeast strain to see if you could mitigate for some of that. Or maybe you'd try to introduce different ratio of bound thiols from different ingredients at different stages in the brewing process. We're so far ahead of the research right now that, it's almost impossible to know what's also interesting. So these bound thiols have flavor descriptors. Yes, some of them are passion fruit and some of them are pineapple and tropical and brilliant, and it makes wine taste like fruit juice and stuff. But some of them have really negative flavor descriptors as well. And that enzyme that the yeast has acts indiscriminately on those bonds. So it whilst also making it passion fruity, it could also be making it, sick and horse blanket or whatever, So there's it's not a straightforward area of brewing by any stretch. No bit of brewing is really. I don't think there's all compromised, but unlocking flavor, but it's just about how do you manipulate that in your favor and how do you manipulate that to the flavors that you want. Is interesting. I wonder where we'll get to this year and beyond now. Like I said, if it turns out that it's a nice, readily accessible, cheap ingredient that we can that can introduce phenomenal tropical aromas to beer, it's going to be it'll be revolutionary.
Obviously, when we get to it, we'll have a conversation about. But potentially, one of the kind of the restrictions we could place on this is not using tropical flavored hops, etc. For example, trying to push this yeast with your old school hops, with the noble hops, with just malt, etc., and see how far that gets us. We can definitely throw our heads together as to how to approach this.
When did you say it might be around, Paul? I can't remember.
It will be Q2, maybe end of Q2. By the time it's packaged. I've just opened this tab that I forgot to show you as well. This is you might know this guy who has his homemade Burton Union set, and he's done a brew with Fountain Bridge in there. I think this is a live stream, or maybe we're just catching up anyway. This is over the last couple of days, so it's homemade Burton Union set with a couple of firkins, or they might not even be firkins, they might be pins. Crazy stuff. Really, really creative, creative guy there for sure. Who knows? It might taste awful, might be horribly infected, but it looks cool. So we'll. I think we're going to try some beers from him over the next couple of weeks now. That's basically it for me, guys. I don't know. Is there anything like in the world of enzymes, processing aids, any questions on that, or are we just about fatigued to listen to my voice?
I was wondering the ALDC once it's, or ALDC, when it's repackaged, what kind of shelf life is on it?
As long as it's kept refrigerated, it should be months, if not years.
Okay, so it doesn't oxidize or do anything weird over time?
No, should be super stable. You've got commercial brewers buying 1 kg or 5 kg tubs and using that across almost 6 months, 12 months of brewing. And so that'll be, opening and closing that once or twice a day and using it across that many brews. So it should be fairly easy, certainly compared to some of the other ingredients you're using. Fairly easy to keep that going. And give it a go and see if you can shorten your condition time and make better beer with it, basically.
I use it in every brew, but I tend to do diacetyl rest anyway. Just it's habit, isn't it?
And you know what? There's a lot of commercial brewers that do that as well. It's the belt and braces approach, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There are in fact people using diacetyl knockout yeast in the States and ALDC, and I know that, and they will just swear by it. And there we are. So there's, in theory, there's no way that yeast strain could make diacetyl, but they still use ALDC, and belt and braces. But that's probably even more extreme, right? That's like Stephen said other enzymes other than the ALDC. I can go. Let me share again. I can go back if you like. They would be mashing enzymes. Screen two. Good. Yeah. Are the enzymes on screen there? I think they should be. So ALDC top left, amylase, glucuram amylase. What that is doing
sorry, Paul, just got a blank screen at the moment. Just says you're started screen sharing. But it hasn't come up.
Let's give it a sec. I think it's just loading my end. To be honest, there's not loads to see. So you've got enzyme called amylase and an enzyme called glucoamylase, and that is breaking down long chains of sugar into smaller chains of sugar. And one of them is acting on the middle of chains and making long chains medium size and medium size to small size. And the other one is acting on the end of it. And what it's doing at the end is it's chopping off glucose units, fermentable sugar units, basically. So all of that is doing what the enzymes in your mash do anyway, but just enhancing it and making sure that you're getting the most out of your fermentable grains, basically. And this would be if you had like a non-standard grist. There's the barley that we use in brewing is very well modified. Thanks. Yeah, it might be, if you want to have a look on the link that Steve just put there, that might be faster than what I'm failing to share at the moment. There we are.
You're there now.
So this would be if you were from an area that's not making good malted barley, or you're trying to use something in the mash tun that you shouldn't be. There's people that make beer with 60% recycled pasta, and if they live next to a bakery, they're using the moldy bread from the bakery, or not the moldy bread, the discarded bread from the bakery. So that's basically it's using the enzymes that are amylase, glucoamylase, that are already there, but just in increasing the amount so they can work faster and better, more efficiently. Mashies down here is a blend of enzymes, which is designed for use in the mash tun. High adjunct, low diastatic, which would help. High adjunct. So depending on what you're up to, perhaps the mashies here. This isn't a tailored blend. This is just a generic blend of enzymes for your mash tun, and they will do everything that grain of barley was trying to do. Or not necessarily grain of barley, but it's going to be cellulase to break up some of the plant matter, and solubilase to make it less of a viscous mash. Free it. Basically, it's getting as much sugar into solution as possible. So if you were beta-glucanases, if you're using a ton of oats or things like that as well, which can really clog up a mash tun, and you'll know when you've had long brew days yourself with a stuck mash, just how frustrating that could be. Now imagine that's clogged up the production for the day, and you've had to stay late. And rye is bad for it as well, isn't it? So it causes real problems on a commercial scale. You really don't want your brewers doing 12-hour shifts every time they're trying to mash in, especially if they're trying to mash in 8 times in a week. So it's all about keeping things moving quickly. The distillers are interested in these things as well, just purely for yields, just so no fermentable sugar is going down the drain with these distillers. Although Scotch whiskey not allowed to use enzymes. That's their rules. Got to stick with it. Pectinase is an enzyme which digests pectin. So for fruit juice fermentations, basically. Let's see. I can't quite remember. Grape and fruit must. Clarification. Yeah, I think it can be quite pectin in high pectin content of those liquids can be very hazy, and you get like chill haze, but pectin haze. Right, Raggy. Right, Raggy. Is that a Scooby-Doo reference? We've also got. Have you ever used the cleaning enzyme, Brew? This is recommended quite. It's very, very good alternative. I use it in conjunction with caustic because it is great at digesting those biofilms and things, those stubborn, hard to reach areas that you can't necessarily scrub off or whatever. It's really, really good for staying on top of. I don't know if anyone's up against any micro issues in their little brewery, but yeah, getting.
I was using it just because I value my hands over caustic.
Yeah, that's true as well. You can operate at lower temperatures as well, which is nice. You're not got boiling hot, dissolving caustic.
What size tub is that?
10 kgs.
I just remember we pay about 20 quid, don't we, for 750 grams from the malt miller.
Yeah, well,
that's doing a group buy.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Don't tell Rob I told you. Yeah, you're into the world of repackage. You should see how cheap we buy
30 quid on malt miller, that one.
Yeah, it's really, really good stuff. We use it a lot ourselves. That's why it's on. It's particularly good at heat exchangers and the the bits that you can't see that you might think are clean because you've been passing caustic over it, but actually the biofilms are really, really stubborn, and that's what we recommend it for. We run into a lot of brewery cleanliness issues, microbiome issues and things, and that's one of the first things is getting people to assess their cleaning regime. And if they don't have Brew in it at some point during their monthly, weekly schedules, then they need to get it in. Great. I think that's about. I think that's just about us.
Marvelous.
Could I just ask a question about the thiolizing yeast?
Yeah.
How's that compared to Pomona? Is that another?
Pomona. Don't Lallemand market Pomona as a thiol strain? I'm not sure. I think actually after release they have spoken about it as a yeast that can release thiols, and that would be, it was mentioned earlier by somebody that there's like degrees of, there's like a sliding scale of it's not like an on and off switch. There is this beta lysis enzyme which is common in the world of yeast, and some yeast strains display high or low or anything in between amounts of activity of that enzyme. So it's not just that it's there and they have it, it's about whether or not they use it a lot. Perhaps Lallemand have designated Pomona as a yeast strain that has higher than normal levels of beta lysis expression, maybe. I've not brewed with Pomona. I've heard it's quite good.
I've got one here. They call it modern hybrid IPA yeast. There's no mention of thiols or anything like that.
Okay, so it's a hybrid as well. So that's another strain that's come from it. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Great honor. Peach and high biotransformation. So that's interesting as well, because biotransformation, the definition of biotransformation is expanded, because that was previously just meant to be like active firm dry hopping and geraniol linalool transformation, but biotransformation now does encompass thiolization because it meets the definition of a haze positive. Yeah. That's a whole another. I'm not going to talk about it. I will put a. Have you read that, Dr. Laura? from Omega Yeast. She's done some really good research, and this came out a while ago. Okay, this is her discovering the hazy strain. You can put this on your to-read list, and then there's another one about dry hop timing, which has just come out, which is cool.
Is this the link?
Yeah, link's got in the chat there, and then I've got another one coming.
Yeah, there's another thing that I've now tried in two beers, both ultimately sort of like hazy oily pales, is the pH of your whirlpool. I was chatting with the guys at Beak quite a few months ago, and they're like, yes, to get stable haze, we whirlpool our hops at around 4.9 pH. And honestly, these two batches of beer are like milk. They just doesn't want to drop.
Yeah. It's interesting stuff. I think again, right? Like you talk, it's the real pointy end of brewing science, particularly around dry hop timing, because some of that is counterintuitive. Previously, if you'd asked me for advice on dry hopping and hazy beer, I would have said, I don't really know, just layer it throughout the process. And by that, I'd mean like do active and do mid firm and do end firm and do and just get it everywhere. You must be making haze if you're getting that much in, surely. But actually, with this discovery of the haze positive HZY protein, and then some of this research coming out now is beginning to suggest that like skipping bio additions is actually better for producing hazy beer. That then in combination with mash whirlpool pH in and it's just, it gets a little bit chaotic. There's also a new piece of research out of Dr. Laura there on haze and suggesting that like different hop varieties actually have preferred dry hop timings and things. So it's just crazy where the research will take us, but for the time being, there's no definite right or wrongs. Thiol theory is haze positive, though, I can tell you that much. So it should be able to make hazy IPAs like your best hazy IPA recipe does. That's my conclusion there. All right, guys, I'm gonna get out here. Got work in the morning. Got to sell some yeast.
That was amazing. Thank you very much. Loads of detail. Thanks.
Let's have a beer and a chat at the homebrew. What's it called? The Nationals coming up now.
Yeah.
I'll see you in Bristol. Yeah, good fun.
Yeah.
And do you guys have BeerX on your radar as well?
BeerX
in Liverpool.
Oh.
No, I don't even know about that one.
Hold on, let me get the link in the chat here. It's
Yeah,
coming up soon.
Paul, thanks for this. I know when we spoke about quick presentation, some Q&A, but obviously it's now taken us well past the 1.5 hour mark that we didn't even imagine. I really appreciate all the detail. Thank you guys for asking the questions and contributions to the discussion. Yeah, absolutely looking forward to working with WHC, and I know a lot of us have been discovering your yeast over the past year and a half, I would say. It's mostly positive results, and hopefully it's going to be a fruitful collaboration between all of us.
Yeah, Simon, it's been super fun, and I look forward to seeing some results now and having a good chat in person. Have a look at BeerX there. I just put the link in the chat because I think this is the first year that tickets are 100% free. So it's the best trade show in UK brewing for sure. So all the suppliers will be there. We've got a stand with Muntons and Bathhouse X. There's tons of interesting things going on with their products and hot products and everything else at the moment. And also 2 doors down from us, the Malt Miller are exhibiting. So there's a big homebrew focus as well. So there's loads going on. The talks will be awesome. There's over 2 days in Liverpool and free tickets. I don't know why you wouldn't go.
Sweet. That looks good.
Yeah. just having to take a day off for most people. I think that would be the sticking point.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I forget there are jobs outside of the world of beer sometimes.
Yeah. Lovely, Paul. Again, thank you so much. Obviously, feel free to shoot. You've got to sleep and work in the morning.
Yeah. Cool. Cheers, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
See you soon.
Paul.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.